Hello, this is Matt Singer. I am the Arts and Culture Editor at Willamette Week, and today I am speaking with Dr. Shimi Sharief. She is a Senior Health Advisor with the Oregon Health Authority. And I specifically wanted to talk to Dr. Sharif about Halloween this year. And Doctor, maybe you can start. I think the big question that most people would have, most parents at least, uh, is trick or treating canceled this year?
We at the Oregon Health Authority recognize that Oregons love to have fun, and Halloween is one of those holidays that people get really creative. Trick or treating, unfortunately, this holiday season is really tricky, actually, for lack of a better term. It just makes it really hard to keep your distance, avoid crowds, just all the things that we've been trying to practice since the start of the pandemic. So while we're not trying to cancel Halloween, we're just trying to give people better alternatives on how to celebrate it this year. Trick or treating is one of those things that we might unfortunately have to cancel or just give people recommendations on who they can trick or treat with, which would be their immediate household members.
Yeah, is there so I mean, what is the main threat, I guess, with trick or treating? Is it just the idea that like, you can't necessarily trust if you go up to somebody's house that the person answering the door is going to be, wearing a mask and also, giving you the right space? I mean, what are the main things that are kind of working against trick or treating this season?
Actually, it's all of the above. It's not knowing if the person that answers the door will be wearing a mask because most people don't wear masks while they're inside their house. And so they might open the door without one. And mostly, actually, more so than that, is actually the risk of crowding. You can't really tell like what other families are going to come up to that same door at the same time that you and your children are up at that door. So those kinds of things, make it hard to watch your distance from other groups of people who don't necessarily live with you and therefore could pose a threat to you and your family.
Now, what about, a lot of people kind of do the thing where they just leave candy out in a bowl, and I would assume that like most people would think like, oh, that's probably the safest thing to do this year if people are still going to be out around town. But would you advise against that as well?
It is, well, it's safer than going up to a door. It also puts less social pressure, especially on your neighbors who might be higher risk. But there's still the issue with crowding around that table. It's hard to tell kids that you can't really go up to the table at once, and just to tell kids to watch their space from other children who might be crowding around the same table. So that's why that's also just as difficult to maintain distance around like a table, even if it's not a door.
So, what other like sort of traditions that we see around this time of year? Should we, what should families be careful to avoid in terms of other Halloween traditions this year, or at least that you're maybe advising against?
So there are things that people do during Halloween, like corn mazes, hay rides. Those we're really advising against because, again, it's hard to not be in a crowd when you're in those spaces. So we're really emphasizing trying to do as much as you can with your immediate family members, whoever lives in the house with you, and also to do everything virtually when possible. And so that would mean, just getting on a Zoom party like we're doing right now and just, enjoying your family that way, or else watching a movie together, cast it on the internet and watching it that way. And even if you do have to go out, an alternative would be just go out in your car, just driving around looking at displays, but not necessarily congregating around other people's yards.
In terms of like costumes, where if kids still want to dress up, I think there's this feeling that like maybe if certain masks could be helpful for them to wear. I mean, what would be your sort of advisement there just on dressing up? I mean, does like a plastic Halloween mask do much in the prevention of COVID? Do you know anything?
Yeah, I mean, plastic Halloween masking definitely make you look scarier. So that's obviously an advantage this holiday season. But they do have holes and mesh around where you breathe out, around the nostrils usually. So that makes them not an ideal kind of mask for COVID-19 transmission. So an alternative to that would be just dress up your regular face covering that fits snugly around the cheeks and the chin, and just like dress it up in a way that goes with your costume.
So what is your, this might be, maybe not necessarily your purview, but like, what's your advice for kind of explaining this to kids this year, who are looking forward to going trick-or-treating and, kind of all the things that happen during this season and telling them, yeah, we can't really do this the way that that you're accustomed to. Um, is there any like kind of way to explain this to kids in a way that will help them understand why, Halloween isn't going to look the same as it normally does?
So this is actually a really interesting question. This came up during a Facebook Live that we did last week, and my colleague, who's a pediatrician, actually had some wonderful advice on how to talk to children about the pandemic. And she said, children have varying understandings of what's actually going on around them, be it age or whatever the other children around them are exposed to and talking about. And it's really just kind of taking their lead and just trying to augment that information that way. They might be asking questions, and just be truthful that we're just have to be a little bit more careful this year, and they've probably noticed it even earlier in the pandemic, and just kind of getting them used to what a face covering is and how to wear them early on, so that when Halloween comes around they kind of see it as part of an overall package of how to go around this holiday season.
And obviously, though, little kids are probably the most impacted group by this, but adults of a certain age love Halloween as well. And there's been, there's been some reports about, the one of the big issues in Oregon is with the COVID transmission is that, we might be good at following the mask order, but uh, people love to party still. And that's been one of the biggest issues in terms of continuing the spread of COVID is our inability to stop partying. And so, I mean, what is kind of the OHA's position on, with Halloween kind of on the horizon and probably some people trying to plan Halloween parties? I mean, what is I guess I know what the answer is, but I mean, are we going to see the same sort of warnings that we saw, over other holiday weekends, telling people, you know, don't have your Halloween party this year?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it is a lot of the same messaging as July 4th or Labor Day weekend. We're really advising people to, watch their group sizes. There's a statewide restriction on social gatherings of anything greater than 10. So, that's kind of the mandate as of now. No groups greater than 10, and especially not if they include people that you don't live with. That said, we recognize that people will gather, and while we do have a pretty high mask compliance rate here in Oregon, we do recognize, like people who don't wear masks, they might tend to gather also, and we'll probably continue to see that. We'll continue to message, track the data, and message back out when the holiday gets closer, because these are real considerations for the holidays after that come in December and in November.